Ladies and gentlemen, tonight it is WrestleMania 35. My name is Michael Cookie. I am sitting here in my studio apartment in Dortmund, and I will go to my parents in a few hours to watch the granddaddy of them all, WrestleMania, on the huge television of my father because my television sucks. I don't have a comfortable couch. I will go to my parents because I have vacation until Thursday. I don't have to work the next 3 days, so I can watch WrestleMania, Raw, and SmackDown. I always celebrate WrestleMania like this. I always take vacation. I don't want to go to work tomorrow. I don't want to go to work on Tuesday, and I don't want to go to work on Wednesday. I will watch so much wrestling over the next few days that a lot of people think I'm even crazier than they usually think. But for me, I'm not a religious person, so I don't understand why people go crazy for Christmas or Easter or whatever. But for me, WrestleMania, that's a holiday. I celebrate it. That's a tradition. I look forward to it all year long, and I really celebrate it. Tonight will be my 20-year anniversary of WrestleMania. 20 years of WrestleMania for me. In November, I realized when Survivor Series took place that I started watching at Survivor Series 1998. I was 11 years old, so I had my 20-year anniversary at Survivor Series, and now tonight, 20 years of WrestleMania. That makes me feel old, but it also makes me proud because I realized that I started to watch at age 11 years old, and I've never stopped watching. A lot of friends watched wrestling for a year, or maybe 2 years, or a few years, and stopped watching after a few years. Many people never watched it because they don't understand wrestling, they hate wrestling, they think it's stupid, they think it's ridiculous, whatever. But I've never stopped. I don't watch every Raw, I don't watch every SmackDown, I don't even watch every pay-per-view, but in 20 years I've been a loyal fan of WWE, and mainly WWE. I rarely watch indie wrestling. I've never watched WCW. I've been a WWE guy ever since. I would have gone to war with these guys. I was very happy that they won the Monday Night Wars. I'm a WWE guy and will always be. And that makes me really proud to say that I have been a fan now, a loyal fan for 20 years. 20 years, that's 2/3 of my life. I'm 31 years old now, and makes me feel really good. good to feel good for yourself once in your life. No, tonight is WrestleMania 35, and I'm really looking forward to it. I watched NXT Takeover with friends on Friday. It was a very, very good show. Many people say what maybe the best show of all time. I don't want to go so far, but I really enjoyed it. It was great wrestling, a great show. I didn't watch the Hall of Fame last night or the Madison Square Garden indie show because I went partying. But tonight, WrestleMania, for me, this means a lot, and I'm really looking forward to the action. There are a lot of interesting matches on the card. A lot of it will be a very, very long show, but there's a lot of potential in the card. But the reason I'm doing this video is 20 years of WrestleMania for me. Is a good reason to reflect on these past 20 years. What has happened in 20 years? What changed in 20 years? How did the business develop? How did I develop as a fan? What changed? And to tell some funny anecdotes and stories of these 20 years. As I said, I started watching. I knew wrestling from the mid-90s. My brother used to watch WWE, the World Wrestling Federation, in I think it was 1994, 1995, I guess. I remember watching the Royal Rumble when Bret Hart and Lex Luger won. I remember WrestleMania 10, and I also have slight memories of WrestleMania 11. My brother is almost 10 years older than me, and yeah, he, as I said, a lot of people watched wrestling and then stopped. I think he started to watch wrestling. I was 7 years old, and he stopped after 1 year. And when he stopped, I also stopped. So after 1995, I think I didn't watch wrestling anymore. And then it was in at the end of 1998. I can't remember why I decided to start wrestling again. I think it was coincidence. I saw it in the television paper, how do you call it, program, that WWF was coming back to the German channel at RTL 2 with Survivor Series, and somehow I decided I need to record that on VHS and watch it. And it was really. I knew the Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart era from 1994, and that was the Survivor Series. 1998 was Attitude Era at its finest. So this was quite not a shocker, but very unusual for a guy who knew the Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels era from 3 or 4 years earlier. So that everything was darker, more mature, and I didn't know all the guys. I don't know why I hated WCW back then. I read that Bret Hart, my favorite, had gone to WCW, but I never even considered to watch WCW. I was just mad that he went to that shitty league. But what I found in the WWF, in the World Wrestling Federation, was very unusual. Characters like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, The Rock back then, Rocky Maivia, D-Generation X, all people I had never seen before, but it got me. Attitude Era, I think that you can criticize a lot about the Attitude Era, but it is probably for me maybe the greatest time of my life, or entertainment, wrestling wise, because those were the days. That was really incredible television. Stupid, of course, but for a child, it completely blew my mind what I saw there. The Attitude Era was awesome, and I will get the Attitude logo tattooed on my arm as soon as I have money for tattoos, because that really, in some ways, defines me as a person. The Attitude Era. I'm a child of the Attitude Era. I grew up watching this at an age where, yeah, this really, I was, yeah, how do you say that? Really influenced me in a very strong way. And then the first to now get to the topic of WrestleMania. First WrestleMania was WrestleMania in 1999. Of course, I had seen WrestleMania 10 and 11, but the first WrestleMania for me, as I started watching again, was WrestleMania 15 in 1999. And back then, I think that was maybe the only WrestleMania where I was, as you call it, a mark, a person who thinks that wrestling is real and doesn't understand that it's a scripted television show. I think that was the only WrestleMania where I was really a mark, where I thought that stuff that I was watching was real and not television program with made-up characters from a script. And back then I didn't realize that WrestleMania was such a big deal. I knew it was a special show, but back then WrestleMania took part in smaller venues, like I think WrestleMania 15 was, I think, in Anaheim, and it was not a good show. The main event was The Rock and Stone Cold for the first time. I remember that, but I think I've never rewatched WrestleMania 15, and it's not, I think as far as I read in the reviews, it's not considered to be a very good show. There was a lot of Attitude Era crap on the card. Attitude Era at its finest. Shitty undercard, shitty midcard, but great main event. I think I really never watched it again. and The Rock lost the World Wrestling Federation title to Stone Cold Steve Austin in their first match at WrestleMania. Then the next year, I'm not really sure if there was WrestleMania 16 in the year 2000. I'm not sure if I was already an insider, so to speak, back then. When I started watching, I think we didn't even have internet. I think we got internet in 1998 or 1999. I think when I started watching, we didn't have internet yet. But of course, you read stuff on the internet if you have it, or I bought the magazine Power Wrestling. Of course, after a while, I knew that wrestling wasn't real, was scripted, and was a television show. I don't know when that moment was that I changed as a fan, when I didn't consider the stuff I saw on TV to be real anymore. I think WrestleMania 2000, WrestleMania 16, I think back then I still thought it was real to some extent, because I knew that was the storyline when you had the big fatal four-way match with McMahon in every corner, Triple H against The Rock, The Big Show, and Mick Foley. 1 month before, Mick Foley had to retire after he lost the Hell in a Cell match against Triple H at No Way Out. And there was this awesome, I'm still looking for the video on the internet, but I can't find it. There was an awesome tribute for Mick Foley when he had to retire. And it really crushed me. It made me cry. It made me so sad. Even though I wasn't the biggest Mick Foley fan in the world, but this was such a great video tribute. And then Mick Foley came back 4 weeks later, after he just for a terrible match at WrestleMania. It wasn't a terrible match, but Mick Foley's performance was terrible. But I think back then I still thought it was real. I think in the end of October of 2000 or something, when Kurt Angle won the World Wrestling Federation Championship. But then I turned into the fan I am today, a fan who knows that it's work, it's a television show, and it's not real. I think that happened back then. So the first WrestleMania where I wasn't a mark anymore was the first WrestleMania where I realized that WrestleMania is a big deal, was WrestleMania 17 in 2001, WrestleMania X7, which is considered to be maybe the greatest wrestling show of all time, one of the all-time greats in Houston, Texas, because that was the first WrestleMania that I saw that took place in a huge arena, in the Reliant Astrodome in Houston, where over 60,000 people were in attendance. And I still watch it on a regular basis. The opening with the great Limp Bizkit My Way theme song, and then I was blown away by the amount of people sitting in this arena. I had never seen a wrestling show with so many people in one building. That blew my mind. And then Jim Ross had this great introduction with Paul Heyman, and that was the first WrestleMania which really had that big time feel, that epic feel, that way when you realize that this was the biggest show of the year, the biggest show in wrestling. That was also when WCW got bought, and WrestleMania 17, I still think it's the best show of all time, most influential show of all time. That was just an incredible show. 2001, that was when I realized that WrestleMania is really a big deal, and not just one pay-per-view like the others. WrestleMania 17, that was also The Rock and Stone Cold in the main event, TLC match, Vince against Shane. That was a very, very good show, and it has stood the test of time. WrestleMania 18 years later, WrestleMania 17, still awesome. Might be better than NXT TakeOver from Friday, which was also already considered to be one of the all-time great shows. The year after WrestleMania 17, of course, WrestleMania 18, there was the last WrestleMania where it was the World Wrestling Federation. In 2002, after WrestleMania, they had to change their name from WWF to WWE. Um, yeah, I'm still surprised that this new name got accepted so quickly by so many people. There were no issues at all. Of course, people were mad at the World Wildlife Bound with their panda bears that they forced WWE, the World Wrestling Federation, to change their name to World Wrestling Entertainment. But it's not a small deal to change the name of the company. But WWE, the new name, got accepted very quickly and without any problems. This still surprised me. So that happened after WrestleMania 18. Also after WrestleMania 18 was the first time I saw WWF live in Cologne, Germany. My father and I and a friend went there, and I think it was after WrestleMania. Yeah, I just said that. I bought a New World Order T-shirt, and we had very bad seats, very high under the roof. There was a very, I think the main event was Stone Cold and Undertaker. You cannot imagine Stone Cold and Undertaker wrestling on house shows anymore these days. Those were the times. But WrestleMania 18, as funny as it sounds, which took place in Toronto, Canada, in the Sky Dome, turned me into a huge Hulk Hogan fan. In the year 2002, I turned into a Hulk Hogan fan. I didn't catch Hulk Hogan's era at the beginning of the 90s, but he had this awesome match with The Rock at WrestleMania 18. I still watch his entrance all the time with the crowd. They went nuts for Hogan. They booed The Rock and they celebrated the Hulkster as if there was no tomorrow. Of course, the next night, or even on the same night, the NWO Hall and Nash turned on Hogan, and Hogan became the red and yellow babyface again, and I loved it. I remember with my cousin, who watched wrestling with me a lot back then. We were completely Hulkamaniacs. I don't know how old was Hogan back then. I think over 50 years old. But we celebrated the Hulkster, ripped our t-shirt apart, and celebrated this old man as the WWF or WWE champion. That was a weird time. 2002. Also the first time, the year when the roster split came. So that was the big story for WrestleMania 19, I think, in 2003. No, the big story about that was my first WrestleMania that I watched live on Sky, which was called Premiere back then, because that's interesting story, interesting anecdote that I didn't mention yet. WrestleMania 17 and WrestleMania 18, I couldn't watch it. It was not on television. It was not on German television at all. And you couldn't get it on the internet back. Maybe you could, but I couldn't. So I used the internet to get the shows, but in a different way. You cannot imagine that to these days anymore. I used so-called tape traders. People who had the British Sky, had access to that. They could watch their wrestling pay-per-views on Sky. They recorded the show on VHS videotapes and sold them on the internet to people. Oh, my phone's battery's going off. I'll be back in a minute. So, hello again. I'm back. Charged my phone. Yeah, where did I stop? WrestleMania 19 in 2003 was the first show I watched live. Because of the time difference between Germany and the US, you always have to watch it at night. Show starts around 2 a.m. in the morning. I was how old was I? I think I was 15 years old, and I watched WrestleMania for the very first time live on television. And I can still remember today how legitimately excited I was. The opening contest was Rey Mysterio against Matt Hardy for the Cruiserweight Championship, and I was losing my mind. The match was completely irrelevant. It lasted 4 minutes and was not good, but when Matt and Ray came to the ring, I was so excited, and I can still remember that. And I think ever since I have watched every WrestleMania live, and I always do. I like to watch stuff live. I'm not a guy who likes to watch tapings the next day or something. I get spoiled easily. My whole social media is full of WWE stuff. So if I don't watch it live, I know that I will get spoiled. I have ran into so many spoilers over the last years when I didn't watch stuff live. So I've always, ever since WrestleMania 2003, watched WrestleMania live, and I will always do. Tonight will be a very long show, but I'm looking. I don't mind that WrestleMania is gonna be long. There how many 16 matches or something. But as I said, for me this is a holiday, and I want it to last as long as possible. I don't have to work tomorrow anyway. Yeah, WrestleMania 19 also, I think one of the best WrestleManias ever. Not the best, but one of the best. Jericho and Michaels had a very good match as Michaels, yeah, returned full time to the ring. Um, Main event was Lesnar and Kurt Angle, where Lesnar botched that shooting star press, and I think Angle wrestled with a broken neck. It was a very good WrestleMania, but it didn't completely blow my mind. It was the last chapter of the Austin and The Rock trilogy, the last match of Stone Cold Steve Austin. Um, yeah, The Rock also went away very soon afterwards. I think he still wrestled Bill Goldberg the next month. I think he debuted the night after WrestleMania. Yeah, and then 1 year later, WrestleMania 20, Madison Square Garden, New York City. I think I always considered this to be my favorite WrestleMania of all time, and it's hard to say. I still do. I still love this show. I think it's underrated. It's WrestleMania 20 is a show that has a good reputation, but it does not have the reputation of to be the best ever. But I always thought it was the best. But the reason why you it's hard to watch it these days is of course the main event when Chris Benoit won the World Heavyweight Championship of Triple H in a triple threat match with Shawn Michaels and Triple H, and that was the big emotional ending as Benoit finally won the big one, and everybody was crying their eyes out as he celebrated with his friend Eddie Guerrero in the ring. But we all know what happened to Chris Benoit in 2007 when he had the biggest crime and tragedy in probably the history of wrestling happened when Chris Benoit murdered his son and his wife and also killed himself. Um, that makes it very hard to watch the main event of WrestleMania 20 anymore, and makes it very hard, if not impossible, to enjoy that. I still watch it every now and then, and the moment that stands for itself, when Benoit wins the title, and Jim Ross, the greatest commentator of all time, goes completely crazy in I think the best commentary effort of his career. I think it still gets me. It still makes me almost cry. It still gets me emotional. Of course, the tragedy of the Chris Benoit incident 3 years later, you can enjoy it, right? But back then, when in 2004, when that moment happened, that was maybe the biggest happy end of all time. When Jim Ross was like The 18-year odyssey of Chris Benoit culminated by winning the World Heavyweight title at WrestleMania. Benoit, he came so close so many times, but he never gave up. He never gave up. And now Chris Benoit is the heavyweight champion of this world. That was I really really crying my eyes out when I watched this live. Tears of joy because Benoit finally got his moment, and then the Eddie Guerrero, the WWE champion, in the ring. There was 2004. That was maybe the biggest emotional moment of all time, in my opinion. And I'm always the guy who thinks the main event is the most important thing, and that was the ultimate moment. That was the ultimate dream to see these two lifelong friends celebrate with the world titles in their hands at the end of WrestleMania. That was the best moment of all time, and in that moment in that year of I already explained why you can't really watch it anymore, but that's why I always considered WrestleMania 20 to be the best WrestleMania of all time. Hard to say how to judge it now. Yeah, 2.5 years later, both Guerrero and Benoit were dead. But also, besides the whole Chris Benoit stuff, WrestleMania 20, very, very, very good show. Has very good matches. Some filler stuff like all those Fatal 4-Way matches for the tag team titles. But WrestleMania 20 is still one of my favorites, and has a lot of, especially the what was it? The 2-on-3 handicap match with The Rock and Suck Connection against Evolution. That's a great match. Need to watch that again. The year later, WrestleMania goes Hollywood. WrestleMania 21 in Los Angeles, California. That was I said WrestleMania 19 was the final chapter of Austin and The Rock, who were the biggest stars of their time. But they had both retired or gone to Hollywood, so we needed new stars. And WrestleMania 21 was the time when that new era, so to speak, began, as John Cena and Batista won the World Heavyweight title and the WWE Heavyweight title from Triple H and John Bradshaw Layfield. Yeah, that was their moment. Those two matches, they sucked, but WrestleMania 21 still had good matches, like the very first Money in the Bank ladder match. Orton and Undertaker was a very good match. WrestleMania 20. Let's not forget Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle, of course. WrestleMania 21 also considered to be one of the best shows, best WrestleManias ever. I think it's definitely in the top 10 of the WrestleManias. One WrestleMania I think that's underrated came the year afterwards, WrestleMania 22, which was in a smaller arena again. The main event was a bit odd. It was Cena and Triple H. It wasn't the biggest. It was a good match, but it didn't have this too much of a storyline behind it. Yeah, that was probably the moment when Cena really got solidified as the top guy of the company, when he defeated the game Triple H for the world title, the WWE title. Undertaker and Batista had a show stealer in them. No, that was 1 year later. That was WrestleMania 23. WrestleMania 22, I think, as I said, not a great WrestleMania, but an underrated one. That was the last WrestleMania when I was at school. How do you say it? WrestleMania 23 in 2007 was my first WrestleMania after I had finished school. So a lot changed in my life, but I still watch WrestleMania every year. And WrestleMania 23 from Detroit, Michigan was a show where they tried to recapture that spirit from 20 years earlier, also 20-year difference. When WrestleMania 3 was also in Detroit, Michigan, they did a lot of spots that reminded of that event in 20 years earlier in Detroit. I think when I say that WrestleMania 22 was an underrated show, I think WrestleMania 23 is an overrated show. It's one of my least favorite WrestleManias. I didn't like the show back then. I don't like it now. The main event between Michaels and Cena, of course, it only happened because Triple H got injured, but the storyline behind that match was not WrestleMania worthy. Wasn't even Monday Night Raw worthy. It was barely such a stupid storyline where they team up and then turn on each other. Blah 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 blah. It was a good match, but not WrestleMania. WrestleMania where okay, Cena and Michaels, those two names don't really need a big story, but I didn't like it. And I didn't like that Ken Kennedy won the Money in the Bank briefcase, which he luckily lost to Edge a few months later because I didn't like Mr. Kennedy. Yeah, Batista and The Undertaker had their show stealer, but otherwise there was this terrible match with Vince against Donald Trump, Lashley against Umaga, tribute to William Regal. Lashley against Umaga was. I love Umaga. I loved him, but I still hate Bobby Lashley, and it was a very boring match. And we all know what to think about the Donald Trump shaving Vince McMahon's head, and WrestleMania 23, not my cup of coffee. WrestleMania 24 was maybe not one of my favorites, but a very very good WrestleMania from I think Orlando, Florida or something. That was WrestleMania with Edge and The Undertaker in the main event, and Floyd Money Mayweather bringing a huge celebrity match to WrestleMania when he fought the Big Show. I think that was probably the best celebrity match I've ever seen, or I had ever seen until then. I don't know if we can consider last year's match with Ronda Rousey as a celebrity match because she's a full-time wrestler now. Maybe I think Money Mayweather, he did really great. That was one of the best, if not the best, performance by a celebrity in a WWE match in general. He really fit in there with all his bodyguards and his douchebaggery and his brass knuckles and his arrogance, and Floyd Mayweather, he did really really well. That was really a really enjoyable match. WrestleMania 24 otherwise a solid show. And then for me, WrestleMania 25, I was in attendance. That show was in Houston, Texas. I've been to WrestleMania twice in my life. That was the first time in 2009. I cannot really remember why I had to go to that show. Probably because it was an anniversary, WrestleMania 25. But I was not so much into I still had money left, so I could afford it. And I had a very good reason to go to that show back then. But maybe it was really just because it was the anniversary and you could expect a huge show. Yeah, I thought it was. I remembered that WrestleMania 20 was like the best show of all time, and WrestleMania 10 was also great. So I thought for an anniversary they have to bring us a great show, and I have to go there, and I have to spend all my money on there. I went with I think WrestlingReisen.ch was it called, some travel agency from Switzerland, but that was also a mistake because of course flying to the US is very expensive, and these travel agencies offer trips that only last 3 or 4 or 5 days. You go there on Thursday, you go to Access, then you go to the Hall of Fame, then you go to WrestleMania, then you go to Raw, and then you go home. Wasn't worth it. WrestleMania 25 was a bad show in general, and I had health issues when I was in attendance. My seat was terrible. I couldn't see a thing. Um, yeah, I had some mental issues going on at the time, so I didn't enjoy being in attendance for this event. It was a complete disaster for me. WrestleMania 25 is not considered to be a good show, but it has one match that is considered to be maybe the greatest wrestling match of all time: Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. I was in attendance, but it didn't get me. I was out of my mind. I don't know. I didn't enjoy it, and I don't think I have watched WrestleMania 25 again more than once. Maybe I watched it once, and I got terribly sick when I arrived back in Germany. So there were a lot of health issues back then, and I learned a lot of lessons which I did better the second time when I went to WrestleMania again 4 years later. But yeah, whatever I want to say. The things I learned was go for at least a week if you go to the US, not less. The jet lag will tear you apart for at least 2 days. Your body will go crazy. You shouldn't underestimate the jet lag. I have no sleep rhythm in general, but still, it really knocked me out almost. The jet lag was really, really bad. And when I went to America again 4 years later, it was the same thing. So you shouldn't underestimate it. So you should go at least for a week. And you shouldn't go just for the wrestling. You need to treat it as if it is a holiday. Go see the city. I didn't see anything of Houston, barely anything. Maybe one shopping mall, and that was it. And the gas station and the hotel. Don't focus too much on wrestling. You go there for wrestling and you watch all the shows, but also do something else. And I didn't do much else in Houston, Texas. So that whole trip was disaster, biggest waste of money of my life. Um, and I don't like WrestleMania 25. Yeah. What happened? Should I talk about every single WrestleMania now? It will take too long now. WrestleMania 26. Let's do it fast forward. WrestleMania 26 was that was interesting an interesting time for me because I was in a new relationship back then, and I still watched it with friends, and that was for me good to. I think it was probably even the first relationship of my life that even though I had this new relationship, I still focused on wrestling and didn't give up my hobbies, and I still watched WrestleMania with a friend. I think that also started a tradition that I did for a few years with friend Marcus from Bremen. Watched WrestleMania often together. First time I think no, the year after it was WrestleMania 27. There, this relationship had just ended, and I was out of my mind, and that really helped me in my mental health. That my friend came to my parents' house to watch WrestleMania 27 with me in 2011. That really helped me to yeah, don't think about these relationship problems I had back then. There was really WrestleMania 27, not the best show, but that was really an important event for me. That I watched this show with a friend together, and could have, after weeks of personal horror, um, yeah, had a good time. Even though it was not a great show. The Rock was back, which was great. I was always a huge fan of The Rock, and when I started watching 1998, so it was good to see him back. And the year after, I watched that WrestleMania. There was, I think, 28 in 2012 in Bremen with friends. Um, there was a tradition, as I said back then, that I always went to Bremen, or he came to my house, and we partied for a few days. And back then, I started treating WrestleMania like a big thing, a holiday where you really party and have fun with friends and have a good time and go uh, how would you say? Yeah, celebrate it like the holiday that it is for me. Um, WrestleMania 28 was the match once in a lifetime, The Rock and Cena, and the Hell in a Cell match, end of an era. It was neither at the end of an era nor once in a lifetime, so it was a bit uh, bad advertising at WrestleMania 28. WrestleMania 29 in MetLife Stadium, New Jersey, and also events taking place in New York City, like Madison Square Garden, the same place where WrestleMania is taking place this year, New York, New Jersey, MetLife Stadium. I was there together with my mom. We did a New York City vacation. I went to the wrestling shows, she did not, but I did a lot of sightseeing and tourist stuff with her. That was really a good time. The WrestleMania itself was, I watched it live. Similar experience as in Houston, Texas. I had better seats. I could see better because I had seats in the upper area of, how do you say, I had a pretty good. I was sitting far away from the ring, but I could see everything. Um, but this whole trip, I corrected a lot of mistakes I did in Houston. So we did have a very nice vacation in New York City and New Jersey. Did a lot of tourist stuff. I stayed there for at least, I think, 10 days. That was good. Um, yeah, and I went there because I knew New York City is the greatest city in the world, and it really is. Um, Therefore, I went to this specific WrestleMania. I met the Iron Sheik, took a photo with him. He took a video for me. That meant a lot to me because I'm a huge Iron Sheik fan. I was at Madison Square Garden, the Mackay, the world's most famous arena, when Mick Foley got inducted, one of my childhood heroes. Donald Trump got inducted as well. Um, I had a, I didn't, because of health issues and stuff, couldn't enjoy the wrestling show so much. But I had a very, 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 very great vacation with my mother, and that was at the time of my life in New York City. It was really, really awesome. And then the year afterwards was WrestleMania 30, another um, anniversary, 30 years of WrestleMania, and that was also one of the best shows ever. Daniel Bryan got his moment. He had two great matches, and the stuff people still discuss about, which is still controversial. Of course, the end of The Undertaker's winning streak at WrestleMania when Brock Lesnar ended it. It was probably the biggest shocker in the history of professional wrestling. Everybody, the whole wrestling world was silent all around the world. From New Orleans, Louisiana to Bremen, Germany, everybody was sitting there with their mouth open, and you could hear the crickets. Everybody, the whole wrestling world was dead silent for a few minutes. Nobody expected the Undertaker's streak to end on that night, and nobody could believe it. But I think that was what I'm a fan of that decision because Lesnar got elevated to a new level. He got turned into a huge mega superstar that he wasn't before and that he is still today. Of course, you can discuss Brock Lesnar and his behavior the way, but it really elevated him, and it was a shocker. And the streak was supposed to end anyway. And Undertaker, yeah, it was, in my opinion, one of the greatest moments of all time. Undertaker's career, of course, has never been the same ever since. He only wrestled mostly terrible matches ever since, but the streak was gone, and the end of the Undertaker's great run at WrestleMania. And WrestleMania 31, I think WrestleMania 31 was the first one I didn't watch in Bremen anymore because the friend also stopped watching. I watched this on my own. WrestleMania 31 was a very good show. I especially remember Seth Rollins cashing in Money in the Bank. with the heist of the century, as Michael Cole said in a very great line. That was a great moment. Also, Sting and Triple H had a wacky but funny, entertaining match. Rollins and Orton had a good match. WrestleMania 31, one of the better WrestleManias, of course. WrestleMania 32, not so much. One of the worst WrestleManias. This completely stupid storyline between Shane McMahon and The Undertaker. It made no sense at all. Shane lost, but still, the stipulation, they took a shit on the stipulation. Nothing made sense. Also in the aftermath, they. What I liked about WrestleMania 32 is that Chris Jericho defeated AJ Styles, which might surprise a lot of people because most people criticized that, but I think Jericho had lost so many matches that wins over Jericho didn't mean a thing anymore. And when he defeated Styles, of course, weird choice to defeat Styles, who was just new in the company. But I was really happy that Chris Jericho finally got a win at WrestleMania again. I'm probably the only one who thinks that way, but I enjoyed that. Triple H against Roman Reigns was, of course, a terrible main event. And after the Daniel Bryan and Seth Rollins miracles at 30 and 31, we now got many years of Roman Reigns crap in the main event, which I don't have a problem with Roman Reigns. I think he's a very good wrestler. But WrestleMania 32 was, he also lost at 31, but that year they find the right solution with Rollins, so nobody was mad in the end. But WrestleMania 32, the crowd really hated Triple H against Roman Reigns. They hated the match. So that was a bad way to end your WrestleMania. And the next year it was similar when Reigns wrestled The Undertaker in a terrible match where you could really see that The Undertaker's career should end because The Undertaker couldn't go anymore. So, and WrestleMania 34 as well, another Lesnar and Reigns match that the crowd hated. Many years of problematic main events until tonight. Tonight, we will see for the first time ever a triple threat match with women in the main event of WrestleMania: Becky, Charlotte, and Ronda. And that probably will be finally a great happy end if Becky wins the title. But at least a main event that the fans want to see as the main event. We didn't see it in 32, 33, and 34. Tonight, it should be a great one. Also already talked about WrestleMania 33. WrestleMania 33 in 2017 was an interesting time in my life because I started to work at the end of 2016. I got my own apartment at the end of 2016. So I worked in my home office. I could work at home for 10 months in my first job. So I was able to watch every single wrestling show while I was working at home. This still blows my mind. I didn't enjoy it that much back then, but now when I remember, I want to have a home office again. That was awesome. I didn't have to go to work. I could work in my own home, in my kitchen, in my bed, even if I wanted. And I watched television all the time at work. I watched every WWE show. I watched every Raw, every SmackDown, 205 Live, NXT, everything. I watched the WWE Network all day long. So I was much more into the product at WrestleMania 33 than I had been in the years before, maybe the years later. Because I really watched every show completely, not just highlight videos. I watched the whole show, every show. So that was really one of the... I think I never watched as much wrestling as I did in early 2017. So WrestleMania 33 was a special one for me in that regard. So half and half show. Had some good moments, but also a lot of crap. But WrestleMania 33, I have good memory. It was a very, very nice time of my life. Let's say it's like this. I like to remember that time because I really, really enjoyed this home office job and this lifestyle that I was able to live for a few months back then. WrestleMania 34, last year's WrestleMania. We come to the end. It was I always mix up WrestleMania 33 and 34. WrestleMania 34 was one of the weaker WrestleManias. I watched it with another friend in Dortmund. What was it? It was the Styles Nakamura match, which was good but disappointing. Lesnar and Reigns, everybody hated that, and I didn't hate it when I watched it because I was super happy that Lesnar won. I didn't want Reigns to win. Or I wanted to have a surprise or whatever. I really enjoyed Lesnar winning. But of course, it was not a good match. I was really disappointed that The Undertaker squashed John Cena because that was a dream match. But probably if you saw The Undertaker wrestle in Saudi Arabia and Australia, you knew that he can't do it anymore. He can't wrestle anymore. So that was probably the only thing they could do with Cena and Undertaker. I was really disappointed that he came as a dead man because I expected The Undertaker to come back as American Badass with his bike. Last year, there were rumors all over the internet. I expected that. There are rumors now that it will happen tonight. I think last year was the right time to do that. I was disappointed to see the dead man. And otherwise, I have issues even remembering. Asuka's streak ended. Both Japanese Royal Rumble winners lost at WrestleMania. The Intercontinental match, the Triple Threat match was very good. Ronda Rousey had her debut, one of the greatest debuts of all time. So WrestleMania 34 was similar to WrestleMania 33. Some good content, but also a lot of crap. Yeah, that's it. Now I shared anecdotes and details to all the WrestleManias that I watched, talked about how I changed, how life changed. Now we have the WWE Network, we have YouTube, we have Sky Go, and really 20 years ago I had to order videotapes illegally. I don't know, was it illegal? I don't know. On the internet. It's unbelievable to imagine these days. There were a lot of times when there was no WWE on German television. Nowhere. And if it was, they showed it at RTL 2 on Tuesday night at 3 a.m. in the morning with sex hotline advertisements all the time. It was really, really a tough time for wrestling, for WWE, for many years. And you couldn't get merchandise. I remember I was in London with my mother in 2001 and I was super happy and excited to be able to buy WWE merchandise because there was no merchandise in Germany. You couldn't get anything. I bought everything I could find in London. There was... and I got action figures and stuff on eBay a year later. So it was really, you were happy to get anything. You were happy for every action figure or T-shirt you could get anywhere or anything. It was really a tough time for wrestling fans in Germany. And now you have everything. You have stickers you can buy at the train station. Everything's on TV in German or English. You can stream it on the internet. The video stopped. It's really nice situation these days. Times have changed. Times are changing. I'm very excited to see where I will be in 10 years. WrestleMania 45. I will be 41 years old. Hopefully I will still be around. Hopefully WWE will still be around. Yeah, I hope if anybody watched this. If nobody watches this, it's okay. I enjoyed it for me to talk about and think about my life as a wrestling fan for the past 20 years. What happened? Nice, summary of my life as a wrestling fan that I just did. Even if nobody watches it, it was good for me to do this. And I really enjoyed it. And now it's getting dark on the outside and I have to go. Oh, that was embarrassing. What the hell is that? Turning into an old man. I will go to Giesecke, to my parents' home, to watch WrestleMania 35, and I need to have a nap before because I haven't slept last night. I barely slept the day before, and I barely slept the day before, so I don't want to fall asleep at WrestleMania. I will go now. Ladies and gentlemen, have fun at WrestleMania with WrestleMania 35, the showcase of the Immortals. My name is Michael Lemon Cookie. I hope you enjoyed this video and you will enjoy the granddaddy of them all, WrestleMania. Have fun.